Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell. And if you've been listening to my show for a while, you know that I love to bring on leaders who have been working on their own development and are also committed to helping others achieve their full potential. And I'm very excited today to offer to you as a guest someone who has been doing this for his entire career, Sikko Zoer. Sikko, welcome to my show.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the invitation, Meredith. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I am too. And Sikko is joining us today from Paris, although he's from the Netherlands. And he and I met because of another guest who's been on my show, who is also from the Netherlands, Rich Habits. And, you know, Sikko, Rich told me that you were one of the best leaders he has ever known. And that was like, all right, let's have a conversation. And I'm just delighted to be able to explore with you today some of your own experiences as a leader. And before we jump in, let me share with my audience a little bit about your background so they will appreciate where you've been coming from. Sikko has more than 15 years of experience in healthcare and MedTech at Medtronic. He's got a strong history of being a dependable executive leader who is driven by challenge, undeterred by obstacles, and committed to excellence in multiple areas, including operations, supply chain planning and optimization, logistics, IT, and marketing. And these days, Sikko is involved in a number of businesses. He offers strategic advice, consulting, coaching, mentorship, and interim management through his own companies, Qwinn Consultancy and Supply Chain Companions. He's also a founding partner at a strategic supply chain partner dedicated to accelerating business outcomes. And Sikko serves as a senior advisor with the Boston Consulting Group. He loves bringing new insights and providing directions that make companies and their people successful and proud. And Sikko does this in a positive, optimistic, open, and respectful way, as you'll discover in our conversation today. So, Sikko, give us kind of a zoom out, big picture of your leadership journey over the years.
Yeah, so from almost in my early days of my career, I've been in leadership roles. Actually, in the second year of my career, after I finished my military service, I came into a leadership role. And over time, I managed teams, started with smaller teams, and over time grew my responsibility. And in the end, you know, I was leading an almost 4,000 people organization at Medtronic. And over the years and during that tenure, I learned a lot about, you know, what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to lead teams, to lead teams when you have multiple layers in your organization, and that it's all about you as a leader, and that, you know, the success of your team, of your organization depends a lot on you and how you behave and what your mindset is.
Mm-hmm. And I know in our earlier conversation, you shared with me an example that I guess we'll call it a case study that I want to explore with you today, because it involved so many different aspects of leadership that are relevant for my listeners who are in leadership roles themselves. And this had to do when there was a merger, right, between two companies. So tell us the backstory of how that happened, and then let's talk about what are the things you had to do to make it work?
Yeah, so at the time I was the leader of the supply chain organization for Medtronic in EMEA, and then we acquired another company which was basically almost the size of Medtronic. So although it was an acquisition, it was more of sort of a merger. So, and I got the opportunity to be the leader of the new supply chain organization for that combined company. And and it's always a challenge when you bring two organizations together because of different cultures, and the cultures of that company, Qwinn and Mentorship, were completely different. But at the same time, I was leading the supply chain organization and I was asked also to take up the leadership of the customer service, or we called it customer care organization. And although supply chain and customer care are working together in an organization because they're part of this one end-to-end process to serve the customer in the best optimal way, you typically see that the culture in a customer service organization and the mindset in a customer service organization is different from that one in a supply chain organization. So I basically had a challenge where I had basically to bring four different, you could say, blood groups, mindsets together, which is, coming from two different companies and coming from two different functions. And then I got, I got that leadership, and then, I've had to find a way, okay, but how I'm going to make this work? And, it was really challenging because it was absolutely not obvious that people would automatically start collaborating because, they needed to find a way and, didn't know each other, a lot of trust challenges and trust questions. So, this is where, I started thinking about, how can we change this? And this is at one point of time where, and this is why the way where I knew Richard from also, where I said, I need to find a way to bring this together and create this one culture, this one mindset. And this is where we started a project which we called at the time Project You. And it was all about you. What can you do to change the situation? And give you a little bit of background also, Meredith. One of the challenges was also next to that there was a trust issue. There was also a lot of victim behavior in the organization, blaming others for things that went wrong, and things never go perfect. So, you can start continuing that, but then as a team, as an organization, you start running around in circles, and basically it becomes a vicious circle that you can't get out anymore. And that's where, as I mentioned before, we started this initiative, Project U, which was all about mindset and ownership in the end.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the mindsets being different between the supply chain folks and the customer service folks. What would you say were the key differences that they were bringing? Because I want people to appreciate these kinds of differences, because we're always, in any organization, we're dealing with differences in people, but in particular, since you mentioned those two mindsets.
Yeah, no, so, customer service, typical customer service people are in front of the customer, and they get all the feedback from the customer, and they need to answer all the questions of the customer. And most of the time, when a customer comes to you, especially in a business to business environment, it's not always positive in the sense that they want to know where is my product, or I have a problem with this, or a complaint, or whatever. And customer service people tend to really have this external perspective, this outside in perspective. They think about the customer and the customer first. Typically, whereas supply chain people are trying to optimize the process and almost by nature are looking inside out. So they look at the internal world, internal organization, and try to optimize that, and not necessarily coming from the customer perspective, because supply chain people like to optimize inventory, for as an example, where a customer service people will say, just make sure that the products are available so that I can serve my customer. And although they're part of this one company and one process, which is to serve the customer, their interests could be conflicting, and they feel it as conflicting. Well, in the end, they're all there to serve the customer. So, they have, in the end, one common goal. But if you don't help them to understand that they're part of one process with one common goal, then suddenly, they start fighting each other. And that's that mindset and that culture that mindset is different, and that reflects also on the culture in those two functions typically.
So, given that you had that situation, talk a little bit about some of the things you did to help them learn to listen to each other, to understand those different perspectives so that they didn't see it as a right, wrong thing, but, or as a victim thing. You were just mentioning, this victim mentality, and I can see where that right, wrong, and victim, you're doing this to us kind of thing could creep in. So talk a little bit about what you did to help shift that.
So first of all, we spent a lot of time about, and you were raising a really important point, was about listening, and it's so easy to say, I'm listening to you. Oh, Meredith, I listen to you. But do I really listen to you? Do I really make an effort to really understand what you're saying? And also myself, I had to learn it also. I came through the ranks, grew. I had a certain way of doing things, which made me successful. And I was not listening to other people all the time. I was hearing what they were saying, but I was not listening. I was not, you know, before someone even maybe ended his first sentence, I already had an opinion about, what he or she was telling me. And this listening is so important that you said that you basically, I always say, free up your mind, make sure that there are no, and we called it filters at the time, but no filters in your mind, and that you really start try to listen. What is someone actually saying, and do I really understand what they're saying? And I'm open for the opinion of the other, so that I can learn from that, because that's really key. Because maybe I have a perception about how things should go, and I have a perception about how we should do things, but the other has a different opinion, and maybe it's completely different to what I'm thinking. But it's not upfront. It's not clear if he or she is wrong. Maybe she's absolutely right. But could even be, if they are wrong, it's good to understand where they're coming from, but because I can learn from that. And if you start doing that, then suddenly you build a certain understanding towards each other about where is the other coming from. I think that's so critical in the success of, if you are as an individual, but also within a team. I believe great teams, they have an appreciation for the opinion of the other. And if you have that appreciation, and it only comes with truly listening to each other, then suddenly, you see the outcome, the performance, the impact of a team suddenly grow. And it's the same with victim behavior, and it's like, okay, it's so easy to blame you, Meredith, for things that go wrong, but what can I, and maybe it's even your responsibility. Maybe it's even your responsibility, but what can I do to help you to be successful? Because if you're successful, I will be successful also, because we want part of that one team. So, and move away from that victim behavior by saying, you are an owner. And what does it mean to be an owner? But an owner, and not only be an owner for what is in your own area of responsibility, but feel ownership for the whole, for the success of this team, this one team. And I think that's really critical.
I love what you were saying about really listening, because too often we are ready to jump in and, refute what someone else has said. And we're really not hearing them and listening really closely, if that's our purpose in listening. And so it takes time for people to develop this new way of approaching a conversation with someone else. Did you find that you needed to model that for them, or be able to point out those who were doing it well? How did you help the group as a whole learn to become better listeners?
Yeah, and just so you need to be that role model, but that's also easy, to say, okay, I'm that role model. But what does it really mean? Because I started also saying with, for me, myself, it was even really challenging. So it meant also to be open for feedback. and appreciate the feedback. And actually, we decided also within the team that we had basically sort of couples, people that were each other's back in the sense of, the behavior that we would like to see within the team. And I had also someone, and she was really strong and was also willing to give feedback, because that's the other end of the other side of the medallion. It's to be open to receive feedback, but you need also people that would like to speak up and are willing and dare also so to provide that feedback. But based on that feedback, I started to learn myself also to be more open. I was in meetings that I thought I was listening, and then I got the feedback afterwards by the one who I was partnering with, and said, did you really listen? And did you really see how people were behaving? Because listening is not only, audio, but it's also visually, capturing what is the behavior? What do I see? Do I see, some behavior with people that I can use also to really understand what they're feeling? And sometimes I need to confess also that I thought I was listening, but actually missed completely the point, because people were showing some signs that they were not concurring with what I'm saying or the feedback that I was giving. And it was really challenging and also really difficult. And again, it's you as a role model. You are the leader. You need to show this. You need to be the role model, but also be open for feedback. And also willing to receive that feedback, even if it's almost in public. So, and that's also something which is difficult for people to give feedback in public. Is really difficult, because before it becomes really negative, or can be perceived as really negative. So it's not easy. Let's put it that way.
Oh, well, it isn't. And especially this idea of receiving feedback publicly, that we might be surprised by what we're hearing. And then there's also the feeling somewhat embarrassed to have other people hearing this as well. And I think as leaders, being able to respond in a way that is not defensive or, justifying what we did, but instead expressing appreciation for someone being willing to speak up, because I think that's part of what you're saying with the role modeling.
Absolutely. No, that appreciation is really important, because, thanking someone also for feedback that might initially feel negative for you, but thanking someone for that is really important also, because then you show your appreciation, and that's a positive way of driving things, I would say. I really believe also in showing appreciation and also celebrating success, because that's a way also for a team to be to go to the next level, basically. And again, that starts also with you as a leader. Again, receiving the feedback, appreciating the feedback, and maybe sometimes celebrating even the feedback also.
Well, I'd love to hear, how did you go about expressing appreciation to others? Did you do it publicly or privately, or find out what way they preferred receiving that kind of appreciation?
Both, but also a lot publicly. And also organizing typical things like, a prize, for whatever achievement or whatever. But also in team meetings, just showing the appreciation and just thanking people for all the efforts that they did to maybe prepare something or come up with an idea. But also privately in one-on-one conversations or whatever. Or just, if you're a leader, people look at you, and for a lot of people, they feel there is a distance. Even if you say, I'm really, you can always come to me. My door is always open. You can always step in my office. People don't do that, It's difficult. And if you then there and you're walking around in the building, in the office, or in a distribution center, or you're on a shop floor in a manufacturing site or whatever, and you just go out there and you just give almost, sort of a tap on the shoulder and tell people, hey, you're doing a great job. The impact is fantastic, and it's even bigger than, you can give people a big salary increase, which they always will appreciate, of course. But the longer term effect that you get from giving people just a friendly tap on the shoulder and say, thank you for everything you do, is much more than, just showing the appreciation through a salary increase, what you should do also, by the way. But, we tend to look at the latter, and we should think about, that other thing, which is just the small things that make the difference.
That is such an important point, Sikko. I really want to emphasize that, because we all want to feel that we matter as individuals, but also what we're doing matters and makes a difference. Now, I'm curious if that was a skill, because I think that is a skill, learning to notice and then express appreciation to people. Was that something that came naturally to you, or was that something you had to really
No,
develop over time?
no, it was not naturally. It was I think I underestimated it. I was one of those, I was almost say, but I was one of those bosses that almost took success or for granted, almost, in the sense, oh, okay, we did this, thank you, and let's go on, next challenge, next opportunity, let's jump on the next opportunity, instead of just take the time, reflect on, what did we do, how did we do it, and then, if it was successful, appreciate and celebrate the success. But sometimes you're not successful also, and that's what, if people look back, they look at the things that did go wrong, but everything that went well, we take for granted. And I think you need to talk about both and show appreciation for both. And also, I always challenged, motivated people to take risk. I really don't like people that take the status quo and are managing the status quo, because then you get into a situation of a sort of a standstill. But you need to take risk to go to the next level. But if you take a risk, things can go wrong. But if you stimulate and tell people to take risk, you need to accept the fact that things can go wrong and not blame people for what went wrong and burn them down because things went wrong. But tell them, hey, fantastic, you took the risk, you tried it, okay, it didn't work out in the end. Let's see why it didn't work out, learn from it, and then we go on. And we go on the next journey, we go on the next challenge, we go after the next opportunity. And that's what people really start appreciating, also, because we need to move away from, always looking at everything that goes wrong. You see, typically also, people have a balanced scorecard, and then 10, let's say you have 10 topics on the balanced scorecard, which is a lot anyway, but let's, for the example, 9 of them are green and there's 1 red. Where is everybody focusing on? On the red line. So, and not saying, okay, let's start first with the 9. Okay, what did we do? Why is it green? What did we do well over here? What can we learn from it? And then go to, okay, that 1 red line, and to say, okay, okay, what can we learn from here? And what obstacles are there? How can I help you as a leader? Instead of, challenging you only why things went wrong, but how can I help you? How can I support you?
Yeah. I was just thinking, as you were describing that, how sometimes if people have been in a work environment where there were negative consequences for them taking risks, they can become risk averse and not want to try things. And so I'm guessing you had some folks like that on one or both of these teams that you needed to encourage to step out and try new things. Do you remember what were some of the things that you did that helped them feel safe, other than what you just described? Were there some other things that you said or did to help them feel like, okay, I really can try something different and not get punished for it.
Yeah, no, first of all, I think again, people, even if people are there and they're maintaining the status quo, in itself, showing an appreciation for that build a level of trust and a level of self-confidence, because that's where it starts. So you need to build a certain level of self-confidence with the people. And that's also a lot of talking and speaking with them and trying to understand. But if you start showing that appreciation, and then you basically challenge them, you give them a certain, you show them, okay, maybe there is an opportunity, start going after it, and some people pick it up, and some others have a difficulty with that, and then you have a further conversation with them. But it's paying a lot of personal attention, I think, in the end, also to people. It's not just saying, okay, go after this, and oh, you can do this, da 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 da. No, you need to always, you need to coach people and support them really to go there, and then you will see that a lot of folks get there. But yeah, in the end, there will always be a few that will continue to have that challenge. But at one point of time, they will see for themselves also that this is not maybe the environment that really they can excel in, and then you can also help them to find another opportunity. So that's what I did also in my team. There were a few that got it immediately, but it's just a few. Then the larger group, we went as a team through that whole journey. And some of that needed really that attention, and some of that didn't get there. But it was not that we then basically, looked at that as collateral damage and took it for granted and let them go or whatever. No, we helped them to move to another position or another function within the organization where they really could perform and excel and further develop.
Was going to ask you about the resistors. So you just shared that, because in any time there's a major change, like you're talking about companies coming together or two different types of work groups being asked to cooperate, there are going to be some folks that just don't get on board with that. And I love your approach of helping them find a different way to be successful, instead of frustrating yourself and then trying to force fit them into a situation where it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah. But I think, Meredith, what's also important as a leader, that upfront that you understand that there will be people that will not make it. It's not bad in itself. It's just the way how you handle things in the end. That makes the difference. I think. If you have 10 people around the table and you want to do a change, there probably one or two that will have severe challenges to make the change. But don't look at it as collateral damage up front and just then get rid of it in a bad way. But at least try to build a level of understanding. But it's not bad in the end either to let people go, because that's another thing. But the way you let people go, that makes the difference, in my opinion.
I agree. I was just thinking, as a leader, it's important to avoid yourself adopting a victim mindset. Why is this person not cooperating? Why is this person, on my team? Why am I stuck with this individual?
Oh, yeah.
And so for you as a leader there, what was the inner work that you did to help you really operate from a position of owner rather than victim in situations that weren't going the way you hoped they would?
Yeah, I always try to find a positive, I would say. Always try to find a positive. I'm maybe lucky because I have a very positive mindset. First of all, I always look at, I always say I work on the bright side of the street in the sun, which is it's much better to walk in the shadow because it's cold and dark over there. So it's better to walk in the sun. That's what I try to do always. But from time to time, it's challenging. I had also sometimes sleepless nights, but I was thinking, oh my God, how I'm going to help this person. But it's about that mindset, but also be open also. So and I talked in your introduction you said I had through Rich, and I know Rich already for a long time. But it's also good to have someone else which is outside of your team, outside of your organization, even that you can reflect with and just talk with and get fresh ideas, new insights about how you could handle that situation. And I think that was also really, really helpful. And again, it's getting feedback, but in a different way, getting feedback. But it was really helpful for me also to sometimes have really time and also taking the time to have these kind of conversations with someone else.
You mentioned that with Rich, working with somebody outside. And also earlier, you were talking about like in a meeting and then later getting feedback from someone who was in the meeting. This idea that we don't have to go it alone, that we don't have to have all the answers or the insights, or, if we're having sleepless nights, how can we get support and help for ourselves?
Yeah.
In order to, handle things better? What were some of the insights that were helpful to you from Rich or anyone else that was able to provide feedback for you?
Yeah, just for me was also important just talking about it and reflect also on my own behavior in that case, in some of those cases, I think was really insightful. But in the end, for me, it was really good and important just to have someone just to talk about it, because during the conversation, something it was not even that in that case someone else came and said, okay, this is the way you need to solve it or whatever. But what I experience is that sometimes you start walking around in circles, you know and before you know, you start running faster and faster and faster, and sometimes you just need to say, okay, slow down, step out, just take time. It doesn't have to be solved tomorrow, because I'm also someone who's really impatient from time to time. It doesn't have to be solved tomorrow. And also, give the other some time also to change. Yeah, because sometimes for yourself, everything is obvious, because for yourself, okay, I don't want to have this victim behavior. I want to have ownership. They should listen to each other. Maybe it's not that obvious for the other. Maybe, you need to go the extra mile, etc., etc. So I think for me, it was really important to have those just simple these conversations and just step out and not continue running around in circles, but just step out of that and then look from, basically someone who's forcing you to look at the situation as a sort of an outsider. I think that for me was the most important, I think.
It shows the importance of being able to talk about things yourself, because sometimes as you hear yourself talk, as you said, it isn't necessarily the other person giving you some advice or words of wisdom. It's coming to realizations as you hear yourself talking through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, thinking, Sikko, that you had a 3-year period here of making this integration happen. And you've shared some of the things that you did. I'd love to hear you talk about on the other side of it, because you had said it really was a transformation. What was it that people were doing differently after going through the processes that you have just been describing? How were they different in the way they interacted and worked together?
Yeah, so the most striking thing was that initially we had really sort of, I would say, negative vibe in the organization. And after 3 years, we had this positive vibe, and people, there was a level of self-confidence which was unbelievable. And I found that so striking, and people really, be echt really motivated to do things better and differently, and were self-starting, um, and 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 it was so positive, and uh, there was I always say, I talk a lot about trust, but people were really trusting each other.
Mm.
And trust is a big word, and some people say it's something that is a little bit overvalued, but I believe in it. And you saw trust amongst the people, and because of that, they worked together, they collaborated. And it showed up in the results, Meredith, because when we started the journey, that team was basically, we were basically looked at, as the ones that I don't know, we had product availability challenges, service levels was not good, costs were exploding through the ceiling, etc., etc. And after 3 years, other functions, commercial organizations, etc., came to us and wanted to learn from us how we changed and how it was possible that we were growing as an organization, that we were so successful, that people were admiring what we were doing. I think, and that was, I think, was such a fantastic outcome. When I think back on it, I'm still smiling, about that journey. It was absolutely not easy, but after, I think when you would talk with people from that worked and went through the journey, they will all say the same. It was fantastic to be there and do that together with each other.
Well, I would love for you to share, what is it that those people in the other parts of the company saw that they said, we want some of that too? What was it? What were the
Yeah, I think,
behaviors? What were the
yeah.
interactions that caused them to see something different?
Positive mindset. If a commercial organization had a challenge with a customer, not starting to vent yourself and say, oh, it's because you put a sales order wrong in the system with customer service or whatever. No, really, okay, okay, we have a challenge over here. How can we help you? Do that step forward. Start talking with the other, start understanding. Basically, what we mentioned in the last, what is it, 35 minutes, all those points about, go out there, listen, start to appreciate the opinion of the other. Try to learn from it. Listening, again, listening about without filters, but also, do that step forward and think beyond your own shadow, and think about, the success of the whole instead of your own responsibility area, etc. And I and because everything was basically in the green when you want from a business perspective, and you looked at your performance indicator, everything was in the green suddenly. So people said, how happened this? But in terms of the mindset and the behaviors, I think it was all this positive mindset that I would say owners show. I think that's what they were looking for. And every other function in the organization, and later on also in other organizations, I advised and consulted other organizations also. Many organizations are struggling with exactly the same, with teams that are really occupied and busy with themselves and not thinking about what they can do for the other. And I think that was the main difference. That team that we were at that time was really thinking about, okay, if we can help someone else to be successful, we will be successful also and even be more successful. And I think that's where everybody was looking for.
So cool. Well, what I'm hearing is because they were able to develop these listening skills, these collaboration skills internally, it really sounds like it was a natural thing for them to apply them with customers, because the same skill set can be used in any context. And so the level of customer satisfaction and even loyalty, I would think, to the company would go up dramatically as people, those who were your customers, felt valued and important in their work with you and your
Yeah.
team.
Absolutely, 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 and externally and internally, because also
Mhm.
internally you can think in terms of customers, etc. So
Sikko, I love your enthusiasm and passion because it comes through in what you're saying. And just, for those that are watching the video, seeing your expressions as you talk about these things, it's very exciting. And I want to thank you for sharing. I think you've given so many specific ideas of things that my listeners who are in leadership roles themselves could ask themselves, how can I help people shift from that victim mindset to ownership, to really listening and understanding someone else? And you have such a wealth of experience and knowledge. I know some of my listeners will want to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing. So please share that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm really happy to help people and also discuss with them their challenges and how maybe my experience can help them to solve for some of those challenges. Now, the easiest way is to reach out through my LinkedIn profile. So just type in Sikko Zoer on LinkedIn, and you'll find my profile, and just send me a message. And otherwise, they can contact me also through email. So Sikko Zoer at QwinnConsultancy.com, and I will answer.
Great. Well,
Absolutely.
we'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show
Yeah.
notes page so they can
Okay.
just click right there and contact you. Sikko, thank you so much for being with me today. And I want to acknowledge you for the amazing work that you did there at Medtronic, and also today now working with so many other organizations through the different businesses you have, the positive impact that you're having on those people directly, and then the ripple effect because of the people they then interact with in a positive way because of what you've helped them see and learn. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.